Welcome everyone to the Chinatown Youth Leadership Council College Panel. This is the first event that our panel has hosted, and we're so glad to have all of you here today. Thank you so much for coming. Our mission is to empower youth in Chinatown through leadership building, civic engagement activities, workshops, education on Asian American issues, local issues, and coalition building with other youth groups. As two other youth groups are here, KRCC and FISH. So we're going to get started. First, I want to introduce our college panel moderator, Lynn May. She's one of our council members. And then I'd also like to introduce Winnie Lee, who is another council member, June Tan, Matt Allen, an intern, and Edward Lee, also an intern with the CBCAC. So the Youth Council is run under CBCAC, which is Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community, and we're hosted out of this building, which is the Chinese American Service League. Thank you all for coming, and I'll turn it over to Lynn.
These are undergrad academic advisors and professors. Please use 1 to 2 sentences to introduce yourselves.
Should I start? Okay, all right. Hi, I'm Emily Bao. I'm a third-year sociology student at the University of Chicago. I'm from Hong Kong, but I was born in the US, and I plan to live in Chicago or New York in the future. And I'm interested in law, so law school after this.
Hi, I'm Kristen Surla. I am a senior at Loyola University Chicago, majoring in English and sociology and minoring in women and gender studies. I am interested in going into higher education, student affairs in the future, and I'm not from Chicago, but I'm from Bolingbrook, Illinois, which is a suburb 50 minutes away.
Hi everyone, my name is Connie Ma. I am originally from Beijing, and I grew up here in the US. I went to the University of Chicago for a degree in sociology, which is the best degree, obviously. I currently work now at the Illinois Institute of Technology for the IIT Boeing Scholars Academy. Get some information here if you'd like. Basically, I help counsel students on majors and careers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and also help them get into college.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeffrey Alton. I'm the Visiting Associate Director of the Asian American Resource and Cultural Center at the University of Illinois Chicago. I am an alumni of the University of Connecticut, where I have a bachelor's in English with a minor in Asian American Studies and a master's in higher education and student affairs. Prior to working at UIC, I served in the Office of Admissions at the University of Connecticut, and also at Albertus Magnus College, which is a small private Catholic liberal arts school in Maine. So I have admissions experience in addition to my multicultural experience now.
Thank you. What are some extremely important questions that you have asked or have been asked regarding college?
So this is a tough one. I was thinking about it, and I guess if I were, thinking back, or if I were a prospective student now, high school student applying to college, I guess I would really ask, I think the main question to ask is, what is college life going to be like? Obviously, I guess, can I just get a show of hands? How many of you are seniors and have applied to college already? Okay, and the rest of you are juniors and below, sophomores?
Who's a junior? Okay, who's the sophomore?
The rest of you are
We're in college.
freshmen. Oh, you're in college. Okay, I see. Okay. Okay. Well then. Okay. I guess I'll still go with this original question. So, what is college like? College life like? And I think it's really important applying to college and choosing your college, I guess, which some of you will be doing soon. About like a number of factors. What is life going to be like socially? Academically. You change a lot in college, and like what you're interested in right now might not. It's most likely going to change. So it's really important to consider the classes, the quality of the teachers and departments that you think you're interested in, and like really talk to some students who go to that school, who you think sort of represent the student community there, about like what kind of lifestyle you're gonna have there, like a day in the life of a student. It's really useful to use like testimonials like that to get an idea and a sense of, what factors are important to you and what factors are maybe not so. It's really helpful to write it out, like make a list as well, and check out the collegeconfidential.com. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so is anybody a first generation college student here? So you're the first in your family to go to college? If you're a college student, that's cool too. Yeah, that even counts too, because it's a different experience if your parents went to college in a different country. My parents did, and I found it really hard to kind of go to them for help as because they went to school in the Philippines. So did any of you have any of those experiences? Either you're the first in your family to go to college, or your parents went to college in a different country? Yeah? Okay. So I guess that's something that I wish that I had asked when I was a senior in college, because I think back to it and it was completely scary, because as much as I thought I knew what I was doing, I didn't. So the biggest thing I would say is don't be afraid to talk to people. This is a huge decision that you're going to be making, and like Emily was saying, don't be afraid to just stop people if you tour on campus, or send an email to someone on a department website and ask them, what are 3 things that someone from your university would tell me? Like, what are the values that your university thinks are important? And I don't know how you all thought of your college search process, but from thinking back to when I was a senior, it was a lot of like word of mouth, or like I would hear names. I was like, oh, Northwestern sounds really nice, but what do I actually know about Northwestern? So I would say, when you're thinking about going to college, think about what experience do you want to get out of it, as opposed to what the brand name of the school is. So what does the school stand for? So for me, even though this wasn't the case when I ended up going to Loyola, is how much does your school value diversity or social justice? And how can you gain experiences through your work that will help you reach that goal? So just being goal-oriented, and don't be afraid to talk to people.
Yeah, I think these are all good points. I would add kind of more broadly, students that I work with often come to us asking us about advice on what they should major in, what they should study, and if the school matters, the brand name of the school in a way. And I have to say that I don't think both matter terribly much. Actually, I know a lot of people
The case when I ended up going to Loyola is how much does your school value diversity or social justice? And how can you gain experiences through your work that will help you reach that goal? So just being goal-oriented, and don't be afraid to talk to people.
Yeah, I think these are all good points. I would add that kind of more broadly, students that I work with often come to us asking us about advice on what they should major in, what they should study, and if the school matters, the brand name of the school in a way. And I have to say that I don't think both matter terribly much. Actually, I know a lot of people who got a degree in, supposedly something very valuable, or like maybe they majored in biology thinking they would do pre-med, or economics believing they would like to go to business school. But none of that really matters as much if you do it the right way. Whatever you study, you have to just apply yourself to it and look out for different opportunities in school. Get to know different professors, because they'll advocate for you. Sometimes that's more important than actually, doing all of your homework, maybe just 90% of your homework. But a lot of the most valuable things in college are found outside of the classroom, I think, is the network that you end up building and all of those people. So I think that's both relates to your major and to which school you end up going to, because it doesn't matter where you go or like what you exactly study, but that you think smart about it and pick something that you're really interested in, so you'll try harder.
it's always hard going last because I was crossing off my points as
Yeah.
people were saying them. A big question I got is, how am I going to afford college? College is very pricey, very expensive, depending on if you go out of state, if you go to a private school, if you go to an in-state school. How can I afford it? Of course, everybody knows about scholarships. They're probably the best way to go. There's any number of go-to websites, go to your guidance office and say, hey, can I get some scholarship information? If there's a particular school you're interested in, go to their websites and click on financial aid and scholarships. It's usually like right there in links and say, oh, here's some scholarships. If you're thinking about a particular major, or if there's something like I want to do forensic science, we had a conversation earlier, you could Google forensic science scholarships and see what comes up. So don't be afraid to search for scholarships. There's also things like grants that are available depending on what your parents can afford to pay for college. So if you think, okay, my parents don't make so much money, I'm really still nervous, depending on what they can contribute, your financial aid package can say, well, you're eligible for $5,000 in grants. So there are ways to make college affordable. It's just that you have to put a little bit of effort into thinking about it and doing your homework and research. But all of the information is usually right there online, and particularly at the school that you're interested in. Another more hilarious question I get is, do I have to go to class? I think there's this big thing about college, because it's so different from high school, right? You're an adult, you're on your own, it's like, okay, I have an 8 a.m. class, and in high school you have to go, right? Because your teacher's there, they take attendance. But in college it's like, well, no one takes attendance, so do I really have to go? And college students currently, I'm sure you can attest that you go to every class every day, on time, right, early. But that's really up to you. In reality, the way you should look at it is you're paying for these classes, and you're paying a lot of money for these classes. So if you decide to, one, skip them all, then you're throwing your money away, and two, you're not learning what you're supposed to learn, so you're getting behind in the curriculum. Yes, you have the ability to say, okay, I'm really tired this morning, I think I'll just sleep 1 more hour. But again, you should really think about, well, if I sleep 1 more hour, then I'm 1 more hour behind, and that may not be a good thing. So think about that.
To tack on to what you said about the financial aid piece, a lot of colleges are you kind of sense that they're beyond you maybe because their price is so high, and that's something that people in the business call the sticker price, is the full price of tuition, room and board, books, fees, all of that. That amount is usually not what students end up paying at all. It's often discounted in a whole ton of different ways, depending on your financial situation and also the school's financial situation. And often the schools that have a higher price tend to have bigger endowments and can better spend the money on students. So don't let the price of a particular school stop you from considering a school or trying to apply there if you feel that it's right for you.
Thank you. I believe that answered many of your questions. Many of our youth are worried about ACT scores. They feel that ACT is a major barrier to college admissions. What is your opinion and advice to have regarding the ACT?
Can I just real quick, is anybody still taking the ACT? Anyone?
Going to?
Or yeah, is anyone going to take the ACT? Okay, cool. We can talk a little bit about the ACT, but I also thought talk about testing would be important too. So, okay.
So yeah, I took the SAT. So I really don't know much about the ACT, but I can give some general advice about like standardized testing. So really, preparation is the way to go. I mean, preparation gives you confidence. Confidence makes you do better. Doing better obviously is better for your application. So really, just find your flaws, and really work at it. Like practice a little bit every day. I know it sounds like a lot, but if you just spend, it's an investment, right? You have to think about the future, and working like an hour or so every day, or more or less, depending on how prepared and what kind of scores you're getting. Then you should have a plan. I think that's really important, and also set yourself a goal. Like, I want to get like 2,300 on the SAT. Then test what you're getting now and see what kind of improvements you need to make, and like talk to professionals, other students who are getting higher scores or whatnot. on how to go about doing that. But honestly, like, get a book and just practice, practice, practice. And also, don't worry so much if, like, you know, you're really weak in math and, you know, you can't get anything higher than like 500 on the math part of the SAT, if that's how it's still scored, which I believe it is. Because grading, like, these kind of scores aren't everything. There are a lot of components to an application, and a lot of colleges really like strength in writing. And when I say that, I mean your actual essays, you know, which I think you have to write 2 or 3 for each college application. They really value writing because it shows, you know, they want to get students who they can train to think, you know, and it's important to have like a good sense of how to think in the first place and how to convey that through writing and interviews, of course. So, you know, work as hard as you can on the test, like standardized testing, your SAT, ACT scores, but also really focus on making sure you have an essay that sets you apart and that shows off your skills in, like, you know, clarity, syntax, you know, like smart thinking, essentially, because that's a big part of it. So don't worry too much. Like, it's the overall picture that they'll gain of you. Yeah, and it helps sometimes to take a step back and just like let your application sit for a while and then like look at it a few days later, get people to read as well, and to get their feedback from it. That really helps you see the bigger picture, because I feel like a lot of students focus on the little components of it, but really you have to think, how is everything going to fit together? And each part has to be very strong in order for a college to want to have you. Yes.
So I hate standardized testing. Being real, standardized testing, it's just like Emily was saying, you have to just think of it as one of the so many different factors that people consider in admissions. It's something that you're going to have to do throughout your life. I just took the GRE, the Graduate Record Examination, to get into graduate school, and I felt that, reflecting back on that process, the most anxiety that I actually had about the test was just even before I started studying and just thinking about, oh, I had to take this test. Not so much, because when you start studying, you really do have to study smarter, not harder. Make sure that you don't study for like 5 or 6 hours a day, but maybe 1 or 2 hours a day, even 1 hour a day or 30 minutes a day, whatever you think works for you, that you can actually retain the information is going to be more beneficial in the long run. Other tips I would suggest is that now we have so many different kinds of technology to help you study. I'm not sure if standardized testing through the College Board website also offers like the technology software that you can download for free and take a practice exam. But as long as I felt like the best way for me to study was actually sitting down and taking the test. And I felt like that's just a good life skill in general. When you want to practice something, is the best way to learn how to do something is to actually do it and practice. And even though taking the test might seem daunting, the more that you try those problems, the more that you'll be able to pick up the little tips and tricks that really is what comprises these standardized tests.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a great overview of kind of how to do the test. I will say that for those of you who are really worried that your ACT scores might disqualify you from some schools, there are test optional schools which take neither ACT or ACT or SAT. If you instead submit, for example, a graded paper, maybe from English class, or do something extra. There are several of those schools in the Chicago area. One of them is Augustana College, which is a pretty good school. That's starting to be more of a trend. People are realizing that standardized test scores don't mean all that much. So if you're worried about it, like there are at some schools, a certain level of cutoff, but because it's so hard to change your test scores at this time in your life, I would concentrate so much more on the essays, on the recommendations that you're going to get from your teachers, on how to phrase your extracurricular activities. All those things are a lot more important. And then the last thing I'll say is that having known quite a few people who got very excellent test scores, but very excellent GPAs, it says very little about your actual success in life. It says nothing about, you know, whether you'll be a successful, you know, worker, whether you're actually going to be knowledgeable at the thing that you want to study. It says nothing about whether you're going to be happy in college or not. So know that it's something you just have to do in order to get into college. But like all standardized testing, you know, it compares you to other people. It doesn't actually say anything about you yourself. So.
Again, last. From an admissions point of view, because I've actually read college applications, and I'll be honest, I grew up on the East Coast, so we're SAT, but the feeling is still the same. How many of you have gone to a college fair or have spoken to like a college, like if they visit your school and you're like, hey, good. A good question to ask them is, okay, so what's your review process like? And a lot of schools will say, oh, we use a holistic review, which means, yes, we look at your ACT, right? We look at your ACT grades, but we also look at your GPA, we look at your involvement, we read your essay, and we put all of those things together. Right? Just because you have, what's the highest possible ACT? 36? You know, just because someone has a 36 ACT doesn't mean they're automatically in to the school that they apply to. Because a lot of universities now look at the whole person. If you have a good GPA, let's say you have a strong GPA, you're really involved, like, you know, you're in sports, or you're doing clubs, or you're in a band, but your ACT's not that great, a lot of admissions counselors understand, well, some people don't test that well. That's just the way people are. But if they have all these other strong things, well, you know what, let's give them a chance. So you can ask that question and say, do you use a holistic review? Now, more selective institutions, thinking like the Ivies, the more selective schools, they may have very stringent cutoffs, but that shouldn't keep you from applying, because what's the worst they can say? No? All right, whatever. Best they can say, yes. So you really have nothing to lose except for your $50 for application, but you can always try to get that waived too, because that is also possible, depending on your financial situation. And also in a lot of schools, they have a belt range of ACT scores. They'll say, okay, our average is a 28, but we accept students above 28 and below 28. So again, don't be so worried about, okay, I didn't get a 36, but I still got a 20, whatever it is, because I'm not sure. So don't let that turn you off from applying to colleges, because again, most colleges and most universities are looking at the whole student, just not your test grades, just not your GPA.
For this last question, I was going to say, we can all say a few words, but we would love to hear a lot more from the students and you guys. There's not one junior, a few seniors, more college students. I mean, I think we can also answer questions about college itself and all those things.
Last question for the Q&A. What is the greatest concern prospective minority students come to you about, or that you have experienced?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer this question. So I'm a little bit different, so I'll just talk about my personal experience and what I know. So because I'm from Hong Kong, you know, I'm an international student in that sense, but unless people ask me, they can't tell, because I guess I act American. So when I first came to the college, like I felt a little bit, you know, I had a bit of an identity sort of, not crisis, but like issues, you know, because here I was, an Asian who seemed like an Asian American. Then when I told people I was from Hong Kong, people would go like, oh, your English is so good. And, you know, things like that were very annoying. And clearly, there's a lot of, even though a college might be very diverse, you know, as U Chicago is, people are not very knowledgeable about, you know, your culture, your background, and so forth. And so you have to know that in advance, and you know, don't take it personally or anything, and just like educate people about it, because it's, I mean, you probably don't know a lot about their culture and like how things work. Like in a lot of my classes, people go like, yeah, so, you know, everyone who took AP history has, you know, done this project or whatever, and I'll be like, okay, don't just assume, professor, like I'm an international student, I don't know what project you guys are talking about in AP history. But I mean, so it's a little bit extra work, I would say, to like try to catch up. I mean, sometimes you have to look things up and like talk to your friends, your American friends who have experienced these, who have had these experiences before. But I mean, I feel like you catch up soon and like you bring something to the table that they cannot, and I think that's your strength and you should really focus on that aspect. You're diverse. You have a different background from others, so well, in some way, use that to your advantage and don't worry so much. I mean, if you do want to talk about it, find someone to talk about it with. I would say is the key.
So at Loyola, I work as a mentor for first-generation college students who are first years, so freshmen and students of color. And so one of the concerns that they would come to me about, and also I can relate to this too, being my personal experience. So Bolingbrook, Illinois is a very racially and socioeconomically diverse suburb, is that sometimes, or for coming from this perspective and going to college, and Emily touched upon this a little bit, is that sometimes, especially if you major in the humanities like me, you might be the only Asian American in your classroom, or the only person of color in your classroom, or if you go to, depending on what kind of school you go to too, maybe you might be surrounded by people of various different socioeconomic backgrounds, different from your own, because you're going into a different space because you've been in high school or with people that you've known for a good amount of time in your life, and now you're drawing from a pool of students who come from all across the nation from various different areas and different backgrounds. So how do you kind of learn how to deal with that? And so the biggest concern that they have, I would say, would be finding community on campus. So how can you bond with and find friends who you can relate to on that level, that you can go back to, like finding your family on campus. So for the STARS program, we always call our mentor-mentee group our STARS family, and this is through the Department of Student Diversity at Loyola. And what I found there is that by finding my community and getting involved, it led me to so many different opportunities. As a freshman, I was so lost. And I don't feel uncomfortable saying that at all, because that's going to be an experience that a lot of people are going to have, and that's okay. But just know that there is going to be some kind of community that you can go to on campus, and don't be afraid to make yourself vulnerable, because it really is through those experiences that you find areas of growth for yourself. Now that I look back on my undergraduate career and I'm like, wow, did I really present at a conference, or did I really go to the White House? I'm just like, I would have never believed you if you talked to me as a freshman who was hiding behind my notebook in the corner of the classroom because I was the only student of color. So finding community on campus is a really big one. Another one would be just professional development in general, because you're kind of in a bubble when you're in high school, and then in college, you feel a certain amount of pressure to find a job, to get an internship, to do all these things that lead up to what your future career goals are going to be. And so start to network, learn the importance of networking early and developing those relationships. Something that I always also stress to my mentees is also the importance of public speaking, because I feel like people can really gloss over that, but that really benefits you in a lot of ways if you're able to articulate what you're about, especially with networking, because you might happen to meet somebody who is in a field that you're interested in. Jeff's interested in the field that I am. So if you're in that kind of situation, you need to be able to say, this is what I'm interested, this is what I'm about, and these are the 3 pillars that I stand for professionally. And that might sound daunting, but you're going to learn that really quickly, that that's a part of college too. And it's not scary, because you get to learn about yourself in a different kind of way. It's another way of developing your professional identity.
In brief, I think that a lot of students have come to me asking about just how they're going to navigate college, especially if you're from a different culture or your parents have not gone to college in this country. The there's a big array of choices and different things to do in college. I'd say the most important thing is to find something that you're really passionate about, study something that you're very, very interested in, and let that guide you. You need to do informational interviews, kind of, a form of networking really, is getting to know people who are doing something that you find very attractive, who are working in a place that you would love to work in one day. Find those people, ask them how they got there, learn from that, because you don't necessarily have the same path to follow that your parents did. And so it's just a part of that is how you're going to cultivate your network and learn about what it is that you need to be doing. And not worry so much, basically. That would be good too.
To kind of touch on what everybody else talked about, there are services available for any range of student, really. Again, find something you're passionate about. If you really like sports, try out for an intramural team. You need to find a sense of community. You need to find, and the really great thing about college that I really enjoyed was because everybody was so new, finding friends was really easy. I played volleyball in high school. I joined the UO volleyball team, and I had 6 new friends in one night, right? Just like that, because, hey, let's have dinner. All right, cool. And we had dinner together. It was all good. It was really fun. But the other thing is that there are, like for example, at UIC, there's my office, Asian American Resource and Cultural Center, that you don't have to be Asian American to go to, but it's a service and we provide things for all students. We have computer labs and printing and all of these things. And it's also a place where a lot of students just come and hang out, right? If you're bored, you want to take a nap, come to art, nap, you don't really care. So don't be afraid to seek out services like what you're doing today, right? This is a great example. You heard about this panel, you thought, I want to learn about college. I want to meet people, I want to network. So good, you're already starting on the right track. You're already doing the right thing. So when you get to your new campus, because I'm sure you're all going to get there, don't be afraid to do the same thing. You see a flyer, hey, there's a flyer for dinner. All right, free food, great, let me go. Go, meet people. Do that. Find friends. Oh, hey, again, I really like intramural volleyball, I want to play. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there because that's the best way for you to find that community, to find that fit. And there is a space for everyone at college. Trust me. If you like puppetry, you can find puppetry. It's all there. It's all there.
Any questions?
Yes, please.
About what we asked and then about things that we didn't talk about.
Random questions. Yes, sir.
How important are grades in college for your future?
Sorry, how are your...
How important are getting good grades in college for your future?
Well,
it depends.
Yeah, do you want to take this first?
No, well, we haven't had you take the first
Sure.
step.
All right.
Go first. Go for it.
Okay, I have 2 very interesting perspectives on this. When I applied for jobs, when I first graduated college, not one person asked me what my GPA was. No one cared. All they wanted to know was that I had a degree, right? So that's one thing. On the second hand, though, because I applied for a master's program and I wanted to continue my schooling, yes, my grades were very important then, because it's like you're reapplying for school again. So I needed to have really strong grades, a really good GPA. My philosophy with college is, if you're, I figured that I wanted to love learning. Right? I took classes just because philosophy, great, let me take it, because I wanted to learn. As you can tell, I wasn't science proof or anything like that. But overall, your grades don't matter too much unless you're trying to apply to grad school or into a professional school. Then you need to make the GPA requirements for the next level. If you have your bachelor's degree and you're content with that, no one's going to ask you your GPA. And if they did, I'd find that.
It matters depending on what you're trying to do with it. So again, this emphasis on figuring out what it is you want to be doing, what career, what occupation, what path you want to take. It all depends on that. I have a friend who did go to finish with a degree in biochemistry and went to a PhD for a chemistry program. That was really important for him to have a good GPA and try as hard as he did. The school where I work now, I have a lot of undergrads that work with us who do engineering, And for technical fields, it's also important for you to really know your thing, because that makes a difference when you're doing your work. If you don't know how this machine works or how to fix it, that's a problem. But for a lot of other fields, you know, for example, my first job out of college was actually here at this agency. My desk is just outside. I was the assistant to the president, and I worked on answering this lady's phone, answering her email, drafting letters, taking minutes, all these kind of things that depended on my writing skills, which were implicitly but not explicitly like graded on. So there are lots of things that you need to cultivate, and in college they should be broadly skills based, but it will ultimately depend on what you want to do.
I agree. This is not to say that you shouldn't try to get the best grades that you can in your classrooms, but there will be times where there might be a class you have to take for a core requirements that you might not be interested in, which has happened to me many times in my English major. But still try your best. And I mean, with grades, if you're struggling, don't feel afraid to also talk to your professors about what you could do to be better. And then also there's this thing with being in school versus like getting an education. So I hate being in school and being, I guess, evaluated just on my grades, but you shouldn't let those things get in the way of your education and broadening your learning experience and your skills and all those things, because those are things that are transferable and you can use in any aspect of your life.
Okay, from the perspective of someone who's a third year, still in the undergrad college, Chicago is known for being like super studious, and so you know, students like to study all the time, and it's important to consider the college that you're going to, whether it has an environment like that, because that is going to, you know, students are going to be very competitive at the same time, but also it will also help you to really focus and like see the bigger picture and try to, you know, work on your GPA. So I think yeah, your GPA is definitely important, but like other panelists have said, you know, the rest of your resume, when you look at it, right, your GPA is just like one number at the top, but it's your experiences and how you convey that through, again, writing skills and like speaking about it in interviews. That's also like a large part of it. But I mean, be aware of your GPA. I mean, you know, they say first year, you know, have fun, parties, whatever, don't care about classes, whatever. I mean, I would not recommend that. So I would think, you know, you should try to do your best in like, you know, every class, because there's something to be learned from, you know, you will gain a little bit of knowledge that you can use later on in life, you know. Try to be interested and like, try to see it differently, you know, work with people, like do study groups and stuff like that helps a lot. But ultimately, like, and find out like what, if anything's keeping your GPA down, like find out what's wrong, like fix the problem. Like don't just go like, oh, my GPA is really crappy, I won't be able to apply to do this internship or, you know, this program or get this job, you know. Like work on it and, you know, turn that becomes part of your story and who you are, and that actually, you know, will be an advantage, you know. So that's my advice.
I have a question for all of you. So some of our youth, they're juniors or seniors, and they haven't been involved in high school. So they're afraid. They're like, what do I do now? How do I explain in my essay that I wasn't involved in college, but I should be accepted to your school? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, definitely. So I get a lot of students who we do the common application with them and go through the process of writing the activities section, their short essay, and then their longer essay. And the important thing is that, you know, if you haven't done this, you should definitely do this now, but it's possible that a lot of you who maybe have not been very involved in clubs or something have had serious family responsibilities, like needing to take care of your parents. They might be, one of them might be sick, and unemployed, you might have younger siblings to take care of. Those are all important things to talk about in your college, you know, application in general. There's an additional info section at the very end of the application, but you can also always write a letter or ask your counselor or two or something of the sort. There are life circumstances that everybody has to deal with, and that's a part of your own self. But you can also choose to write about in your essay, for example, how taking care of your own siblings or helping out your parents maybe in their business or at home is a part of you, who you are, what you have learned, those kind of things. And then also on a slightly lighter note, things that you're interested in and have just engaged in informally, like church could be a big part of your life, just hobbies that you have, things that maybe you're interested in, you investigate them and research them online, but not in school. That's perfectly fine. All those things that you spend your time on, you just have to look at and say, well, what do I do every day? What would I rather be doing if I wasn't in the classroom or something? Figure out what you're passionate about and write about that, and I think that'll come through.
Again, speaking with my admissions hat on, yes, everything is very true. Even if you have a job, even if you work at Burger King, right, put that on there because it shows you have responsibility. It shows that you're doing things other than playing video games at home. If you're taking care of parents or things like that, and also if you do have other responsibilities, yes, if you can get somebody to write you a letter of recommendation, like a teacher or a counselor or a pastor or whomever you may be connected to that can speak to that and say, yes, I understand that Jeff had a really bad semester, but this is why. His parents had this, and this going on. Because again, as admission counselors, we're people too, right? That's important to remember. I think when you apply to colleges, you think, oh, there's these machines and they don't care. They're not, they want to kick you out of the college. No, college admissions, they want you in their college. They want to say yes, right? Think of it that way. They want you in. As long as you can say, okay, I had a really bad semester, but this is why. As long as you sort of explain what's going on with you.
Yeah, they really want to know what you're doing with your time, basically, and so it seems a little difficult sometimes when you tell a stranger about it, but you should try to explain it to them, because otherwise they will assume you're playing video games.
I don't have much to add to that, but I guess more generally is give yourself more credit for the things that you do than you think. I think that we have this, especially if you're applying to college, you have this certain idea of what a college student should be or what leadership looks like, and that's not true. You don't have to be doing all these leadership positions or winning awards to be a leader or have something to contribute to a learning environment, because it really is the diversity of the classroom that makes it valuable.
What they said.
Okay. I have another question. So Kristen touched upon this earlier about public speaking. So many of our youth are afraid to go to college to begin with because they're afraid to speak up in class, even in high school. So what advice do you have for them to prepare themselves for college regarding public speaking? Or even in general?
So it might seem like I can talk a lot, but honestly I'm a huge introvert. And even in college now, I still struggle with being able to raise my hand and speak in the classroom. It's partially because I'm just a really shy person, but then also partially because sometimes the learning environment might not be a comfortable or safe place that I feel like I want to share my thoughts in. But I think that the thing that changed my perspective a little bit is one of my favorite authors, who you should definitely read. Her name's Audre Lorde. There was this book that it's called Sister Outsider, and then one of the quotes that I remember is, "Our silence will not save us." So if you aren't going to be the person to speak for you, then who else will be able to say your opinions and your story? Things that might help with that is writing things down, or even just taking 5 minutes before class to look over your notes. Sometimes we don't always have time to do that, but even if it just really is 5 minutes, that's fine too. Another way to practice public speaking in a more private way, I guess, is to go to your professor's office hours. If you are uncomfortable talking in the classroom, then that's another way of showing initiative. And I can guarantee you, I definitely have gotten better grades in a class than I think I deserved because I went to office hours. That is not a myth.
Yeah, I will also share my experience. I'm not like, you know, that kid in my classes. I'm not the one who's always like trying to answer as many questions as I can or whatnot. Sometimes I feel, you know, I'm more thoughtful, I'm more reflective. I need more time to think about things before I'm able to answer a question, you know. So, you know, preparation helps a lot, you know, like Kristen was saying. But also like, you know, like practice, like privately and publicly. Like if you write an essay or whatever, before you hand it in, like read it out loud, you know. When teacher is asking class for someone to read part of your textbook or book, whatever you're reading, you know, offer to do it. Like make a goal for yourself. Say you will speak at least like twice or 3 times in this class, and find which classes are more difficult for you right now to participate in, and find out why. And maybe like meet up with your friends or fellow students beforehand to like discuss ideas, so that you have something to say, you know. And also don't be afraid to like speak out ask questions. Asking questions is like a really good way to participate. Even if it sounds like a stupid question, like probably a lot of other students, you know, a few definitely are thinking the same question, so that counts. And then, you know, once you engage with your class and your teacher, like people will see that you're interested and that you're trying to understand and trying to like, you know, be part of it, and that will generate more positive, you know, responses and create a better environment, and you'll just become more confident. Like no one really, don't be so self-aware, like no one's really like watching and keeping track of you, you know. I mean, except for your professor, your TA, obviously, you're great. But like, don't be afraid to like speak your mind. Be thoughtful, but also like say what you have to say.
The way I got better at public speaking was, I've not had many problems with public speaking, thankfully, but when I was in high school especially, I put myself in a lot of situations where I would have a chance to practice. I would, you know, take leadership positions in the clubs that I would be in, and whenever, you know, given the chance to address people, you know, I would try doing that and practice those. The most important thing to think about is this issue of, yeah, putting yourself, don't be so self-aware, because it's not really about you. If you're speaking in class, especially, it's because you find something maybe in the text that you're reading or in what you're studying that's very interesting, or that you don't understand, and you want to talk about that. It's that's important. It's, you know, not quite yourself. And so if you disconnect yourself a little bit from it, don't worry, not everyone's looking at you. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake in class. But you really shouldn't let you keep from developing a good sense of how to speak and what to talk about in public, because it's going to be very important no matter what kind of job or what kind of field you go into.
And just to add on, it was a little, my first year in college, it was kind of hard for me to ask and talk to professors, because it's like, ooh, professor is this genius, brilliant person. But then I would go up to them, but when I realized that the professor wants you to ask questions, because they intentionally, some of them, college students probably tested this, they'll put something really, really just strange on the board, and then they'll start talking, and everybody will be like, and you know, nobody wants to talk, no one wants to say anything, and if I almost say, Professor, what's that? And I'm like, ah, yes, thank you. And then, and I've talked to professors, and they say they want to ask questions because it helps them understand where the class is. If I had a biology professor say, okay, if I'm teaching this concept and no one gets this concept, then they're not going to get the concept I'm going to go into next. And if I'm thinking, okay, and a lot of professors will say, does everybody agree? Everybody? And they'll survey the room. And if everybody's going yes or no, they'll say, okay, let me talk, well, what more about it is confusing? Is it this part or this part? Sometimes a professor will walk you through like that, but if you're the one that just says, what does that O mean? They'll be like, oh yes, this O, it means oxygen. And then they'll go from there. So don't be afraid, because it'll only help you out in the end, whether it's your professor saying, I like that CK, he takes initiative. Good. You know, or if it's just, I didn't know what that O was, and if it's on the test, I want to know what that O is. So don't be afraid to ask that question for your benefit, and also for the benefit of some of your classmates as well.
And more broadly speaking, I think if you're not feeling comfortable at speaking up in class, you probably also have trouble, taking initiative sometimes, maybe. And that is a big thing to try to improve in. Know that it's something you want to work on, and then try to do it. Because in college, as in life, and many other things, if you don't ask, if you don't put yourself out there for those opportunities, the answer is always no. If you don't try, then you miss 100% of the shots you never take, is something supposedly that Michael Jordan said. But it's very true. If you don't make that effort, then you definitely will, not get anything. If you make the effort, then there's a chance that you'll be able to get it.
Oh, this is just a little challenge that I have to some of the ladies in the room, some of the women, is that so my friend recently did a study on who participates in the classroom, and what she found is that a lot of men, way more men participate in the classroom than women. So what my challenge to you is to really try to have your voice represented. I go to a school where it's 60% women to 40% men, but still there are way more men speaking up in my classroom than women for some reason. So it's definitely important to have your voice heard.
Oh, I have a question. How do you balance life between like social life and college life?
You don't.
It's an ongoing process. I mean, you work with it your whole time through life. There's no, because your circumstances change, you'll always have to work at it. So know that you'll never have a real answer for it. But the important thing is to, set goals, think for yourself, what is my goal in college? Well, it's to graduate, hopefully, and to have that degree, and keep that perspective in mind when you have to make a decision whether to do something that you find fun or do something that you have to do at a certain point. Don't sabotage yourself and make it so that you can't complete your work. Don't procrastinate so much that you can't finish what you absolutely need to do. Know your limits, because at some point, this is one part that I was very familiar with a while ago. Basically, being a student is 24/7. There's homework that you could do at any time of day to get done. So it's never quite finished. But at some time, you'll enter the working world where, if you're lucky, you'll get to go home around 5 or 6, and then you don't have to worry about it until you're at work the next day. And you won't understand how amazing that is until you start working, and that you don't have to do those things, until you go back to work the next day. So there will be time to enjoy yourself. Later on, your primary focus, I would say, is school and all the experiences that are going to help you in the future. So it doesn't mean not having any fun, but it means like working smart.
It's a really trial and error process, I would say. You just have to try different things and figure out what works best for you, and that's really going to depend on maybe each semester, what your work schedule is, so it really is trial and error. And also, I would say, learn how to practice self-care and listening to what your needs are at that moment, as well as don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to say no, whether that's to your job or different activities that you're a part of. If people ask you to do things, don't be afraid to say no. That doesn't make you a bad person. That might even make you a better person, because you shouldn't take on more than you can carry. Also, don't be afraid to say no to your friends too, because you're going to be tempted a lot to go out and hang out with your friends, and that's good too, but just know your limits and what you can handle that way.
I'll just quickly add something on because I know we're running out of time. Is that okay? Okay, cool. So, I mean, this quarter I've determined at the start that this is going to be my study quarter, for example. So that means, I'm going to try to work as much as I can. not so I get burned out, because I know my limits, right? My willpower and, my mental power, and I need to de-stress, like, I need to go swim, work out, meet up with someone once a week at least, for example. But there, so at the start of each semester, like Kristen was saying, or, set a time frame, like have a goal, have a plan. I mean, it can be just like a general, you don't have to like write it out and like really be very, pedantic about it, but like have a goal in mind at the start, and then that way you can see the finish and then work towards that finish. If you want to get like all A's, in all your classes for this one semester, then what's gonna help you get there, right? I mean, are you gonna like party for like twice a week, every week? It's just think smart about it. And also, if studying is gonna be lonely, it's the higher up you go, the worse it's gonna get. So like I encourage you to like find study groups. I know it's sad, but that's sort of how it works. So find study groups, work with them, and that way you can like socialize, and like it'll help you make your work more efficient, and you can also have fun in a sense, and that'll help you form stronger bonds as well for friendship, social life.
Does anyone have any questions?
Take initiative.
Okay.
Especially.
We're going to take a 10-minute break, so let's thank our panelists.
And a few of us have business cards, so feel free to grab them if you want to ask us more questions later.
Not us students.
Yeah,
And if you want to, you can make your own.
yeah, you can.
I have friends who made their own.
Thanks, you're right. Okay, so thank you all for coming today, and we would like to introduce our panelists, and Lynn and Edward. They will be the moderators for this panel.
Hello. So our first question is, not question. Please introduce yourself in 1 or 2 sentences.
请用一句话大概的话来介绍一下自己。
好了，我叫严萌萌，我来自中国西安，这是我在德保罗大学的第2个学期，我很适应这边的学习和生活。
我叫王红潇，是来自中国天津，然后就是去年8月份，然后刚刚到芝加哥，这是第2个学期，我的专业是会计。
Hi, can I use English to introduce myself? Hi, I'm Christine and I'm from Malaysia. I'm a senior at DePaul University.
大家好，我的名字是杨洋，我现在是德保罗大学1年级的研究生第1年，在人力资源管理专业。What is the greatest challenge as an international student, and how do you overcome this?
作为国际生，你所遇到的最大的一个挑战是什么？在你的学习生活当中？
我觉得最大的挑战还是交流的问题，因为就是在英语口语方面可能不是那么好，然后刚来的时候可能和周围的同学或者是老师交流都会有一些障碍，但是我觉得只要你就是多加的练习，经常和周围的朋友和同学进行一个交流，然后会越来越好的。
就是交流肯定是最大的问题，然后其余的就是怎么样更好的融入美国的生活，因为就是在美国这边研究生的商学院，就是中国学生现在申请的越来越多，然后商学院里面基本大部分都是中国学生，然后就是课上周围的同学都是中国人，所以美国的同学不是特别多，然后没有特别多的机会和时间跟美国同学在一起，就是在一起交流，或者跟美国同学可以一起出去玩什么的，然后我觉得机会比较少，就是说英语和真正融入美国生活的机会比较少，然后就要靠自己在除了课上以外的其他时间，然后自己去找机会，然后参加各种各样的活动，但是还要分一些时间就是在课业上，所以时间和机会都不是特别多， 所以就是融入美国生活没有那么容易。然后在跟美国同学就是在交往的过程中，然后有一些话题，就是共同的话题，有的时候也并不是很多，所以融入美国生活，我觉得是最大的挑战。
你可以先说吗？我还没想。
我想到的是，就是很不一样的是中国的和美国的学习方法。从我这里来说的话，我觉得就是从小学、初中、高中还有大学，基本上在中国我感觉是一种推式的教育。就是学校会安排各种课，然后给你基本上一天都塞得很满，然后每一周也很满。所以就是你的时间基本上是被学校控制的，然后你什么时候要学什么，怎么样安排，老师会告诉你。然后那种的话就是老师会告诉你要干什么，然后基本上不需要自己去主动的去做些什么。但是在这里的话，其实我们现在基本上一周只有2节课，也就是6个小时的课，然后剩下的时间都是需要自己安排。如果是这样的话，就跟在中国那种就是被老师推着学习方法是不一样。这种情况下，我就需要自己去主动的学，然后怎么样可以把自己的知识，与时俱进，这个词可以用吗？就是不断的更新自己的知识，因为就是我们在学校里面学到的东西肯定是，是已经被总结出来的，然后已经在用的东西，但是它肯定是在不断的更新，然后不断的有前沿的那些技术还有知识出来，所以我们怎么样做到就是可以跟那个专业更先进的东西接轨，然后出去就是毕业之后可以直接去工作，然后拿到一项任务的话可以自己接手，这个很重要。然后我觉得这个就是从本科到研究生需要转变的地方，就是从原来可能就是单纯的学习，然后现在要主动的自己去接受知识，然后去了解很多东西，然后为自己以后的职业生涯做准备。
我也有和你同一个挑战，就是我会觉得时间一直都不够用啊，然后你除了上课之外呢，其实你把学业就是完成的都是不够的，因为你还要想你要申请实习，然后你要工作，然后你每天都要上网去看好多东西，就是你需要的那些知识。现在是你要融入美国的社会，所以你又要去理解他们的社会到底是怎么样操作的，这个就有点累了，因为平时下课回到家实在是没什么时间，然后现在我们都是一对人，然后又要自理，然后又要自己在家做饭，然后又要打扫，然后又要一直去增加很多的知识，会有点累，所以我觉得这个是最大的挑战。
How do you overcome the language barrier, and what advice can you give to other ELL students who want to attend college?
你是怎样克服语言的障碍？然后就是可以再说一下。你给那些正在学外语的，并且想要考入大学的同学有什么样的建议？
我觉得学语言其实是一项既可以说很简单，又可以说非常困难的工作。就是简单在于就是说你只要坚持下去，你只要每天坚持练习，它出来的效果可能不是那么快，但是你只要长期的进行坚持，总有一天你会发现就有一个质的飞跃。然后如果说对于一些语言类的考试的话，你可能要花费很多的时间和精力，静下心来去逐项的进行练习，然后就久了之后也是会出效果的。如果对于交流的话，你一定要走出去和别人进行交流，比如说学校都会有一些相关的帮助你提高语言的一些项目，像我们学校就会有一个中英文语伴的项目，就特别好。你和你的语伴每周需要见1次面，然后你们可以互相学习。中国人的话，你可以教他学习中文，然后他也可以教你学习英文。然后你们也可以说复习课堂上，然后或者是书本上的知识， 也可以进行一个文化就是经历方面的交流，是非常好的。
我觉得就是当国际生，就是在我们来美国之前都要准备语言考试，然后还有一般研究生的入学考试，然后在准备这个过程中，就是一般阅读基本上不会成为很大的问题，然后来这边以后，其实主要是就是口语和听力上一些交流的问题。然后我觉得克服这个障碍方法，其实主要就是多说，就是抓住一切就能说话的机会，然后跟美国人说话。
好，学语言呢，就是交个外国朋友，因为这个很有帮助。然后要看多一点英文书、小说、杂志什么都看，然后看多点美剧，就是模仿美剧里面的人物说话。这个是很好练发音和口语的方法。然后对于写作呢，就是看书的时候要用心看，就是要研究他们的句子构造，就是人家怎么写这个句子。然后之前我有个老师教我一个很好的方法，就是你在看比如说小说，然后你看到一个句子，你就觉得这句子写的真好，然后你就要把它丢到一个本本里，然后把那个本子就会有很多很多不同的英文的句子，然后之后你写文章的时候就可以把它拿出来看，然后就是参考人家这个如果他要表达那个点子，他这个句子是怎么写的，然后就可以套用。然后另外还有一个写作，就比如说主题，如果说是广告，那个 paper 是广告的话，我觉得很好的方法就是你先到网上去搜所有关于广告的东西，然后你就读它们，然后你必须吸取够多的词汇，你才可以写到一个好的文章嘛。然后你也可以看人家怎么形容广告，因为有时候我们要写一个东西，可是我们真的没有足够的词汇，那你要怎么写呢？然后这也是一个很好的方法，就是要准备和用心。
最后一个好难啊，就是我想说，其实要练语言的话，还是看视频比较重要。他们该说的都说了，我就说一下那个关于发音的事情。就是如果要是想要矫正自己的发音的话，可以这样，就是跟着某一段视频，然后他说一句你跟一句，同时可以给自己录音，然后通过比较自己跟就是原来那个人说话之间的差距，然后慢慢的矫正自己的发音，我觉得这个可以，然后就是多参加活动。
What advice or support can you give to high school students that are afraid to enter international study?
你对于那些想要步入大学的高中生有什么样的建议？
我觉得最重要的还是先做好心理上的准备，因为大学的课程和高中的课程应该还是有很大区别的。高中的课也许会安排的比较紧凑，比较满。然后大学的话呢，课程就没有那么紧凑，很多课余的时间可能需要你自己来安排，你就要想说我怎样充分的利用这些时间，我有哪些目标，然后我应该怎样一步步达成我的目标。每天的话，除了上课之外，你应该在哪些时间做什么事儿，也要安排好自己的学习时间和娱乐时间。主要是对时间的一个有效管理吧，这方面的能力需要一步步的来提高。
我觉得就是高中进入大学的最主要的主要是要想好自己选择的专业问题，就是你要想好你的真正的兴趣在哪，然后以后想发展什么样的道路。因为我觉得因为好多高中的时候还不是非常成熟，然后进入大学以后选择的专业可能都是由父母就是家长然后帮你选择的，但是你到了大学以后又发现自己不是很喜欢，这样就浪费了很多的时间和精力，然后就是让自己过得不是那么开心。所以我觉得就是进入大学之前一定要想好自己真正感兴趣的是什么，然后选择一个对自己就是以后一定会投入精力，然后并且学得很开心的专业。然后还有就是进入大学以后，不像高中学业就是最主要的事情了，就你还有很多其他的时间，然后可以去认识很多的新的朋友，然后参加很多的就是活动，然后锻炼自己，就 就参加很多的社团，然后锻炼自己各方面的能力。所以我觉得应该就是安排好自己的时间和精力，然后想好自己要在课业上投入多少精力，然后其他的自己想看重什么，然后发展哪些方面的能力，就是要做一个规划。
我觉得大学是一个全新的开始，高中生应该就是把之前自己所有的过去都忘了吧，然后就把自己当成一个新的海绵，然后你进了大学就要努力的吸所有的知识，就是吸所有的水，就尽最大的力量，然后不要就是觉得，比如说大学第1年你需要念哲学啊、宗教啊这些，你不要觉得就是很不耐烦，为什么要逼我念这些呢？可是这些都是对你整个一生都会有影响的，所以不要去小看这些知识，一定要够开放，然后要培养自己的自信，这些很重要。
我觉得，如果是对于还没有上大学的高中生来讲，我觉得比较重要的事情是想一下自己在5年或者10年之后想做什么。就是如果可以有一个自己的就是既定的目标的话，然后选择专业，还有就是在大学里面，因为对于很多人来讲，上大学本科应该就是就是学业就终止了，不会再继续读研究生，所以我觉得就是本科的教育对一个人来说应该是最重要的，因为它是就很多专业的知识都会在里面，所以就如果可以知道自己在，比方说第5年的时候，我想做一个医生，那我就去学医生的专业，然后了解这个行业所有的背景，然后我需要什么知识，然后我在大学里面就会努力的往那边靠。但是如果没有这样一个目标的话，在大学这几年可能就很盲目，然后等学完之后，可能自己需要的知识或者技能也没有完全的具备，那样的话可能大学学出来就不会很没有效果。
So we have run